It's not really a proper place, is it? It's whatever you want it to be. That's its beauty. But a private village created entirely by one man? Isn't that a little strange? The genuine incredulity in the detective's voice amused Penrose, but he knew what Doyle meant. For anyone who had never been there, the idea of a resort designed entirely for pleasure and architectural beauty, and for those with the means to enjoy them, was difficult to grasp. For an American with, he suspected, socialist leanings, it must seem absurdly self-indulgent. "It's remarkable, certainly," he said. "But strong visions often are. The village might have been created by one man, but it's founded entirely on the belief that beauty can make people's lives better. In Portmeirion, Clough Williams-Ellis found a landscape that was beautiful already, and used his imagination to improve it. That's a tremendous achievement. So, no, I don't think it's strange. In fact, after what the world's been through, it seems to me to be saner than ever, if a little optimistic." He smiled, but Doyle seemed unconvinced. "And it's not a museum. He's still adding to it. Now that the building restrictions have finally been lifted after the war, there's no stopping him. I went back recently with my wife, and he'd just started on the plans for a new gatehouse. So Portmeirion lives and breathes and changes," he added, unable to keep a faint trace of sarcasm out of his voice. "Just like a proper place. I'm surprised you wanted to go back after everything that happened there. It can't have been much of a celebration. If a policeman starts avoiding places that have been tainted by violent crime, there'll come a point when he can't leave the house," Penrose said. "Surely you know that from your own experience." It was an evasive answer, but rooted in truth. Ironically, Portmeirion was scarred for him, not by the murders that had taken place there, but by the happiness he had known during that summer. A happiness made all the more poignant by the shock of Josephine's death. He knew better, though, than to try to dull his sadness by staying away from places in which they'd spent time together. There was no logic to grief, and he felt her absence everywhere. At the risk of sounding callous, I wasn't personally involved in the deaths at Portmeirion, so the good memories outweigh the bad. Doyle shook a sheaf of photographs from a file and unfolded a map of the village on Penrose's desk. "Even so, something like this must be hard to forget, no matter how many cases you've dealt with in your career." He pointed to one location after another, matching each one with its black-and-white counterpart. A body found up in the woods by that weird cemetery place, slashed so badly that the face was barely recognizable. Another murder on the headland, just a stone's throw from the hotel, the victim raped, strangled, and strung up like an animal. These garages, right at the heart of the village, covered in blood. He placed the last photograph in the center of the map, and Penrose looked down at the bruised and broken body, remembering the confusion and disbelief he had felt when he arrived at the scene. "And the final death," Doyle added. "A very persuasive confession of guilt, which seemed to solve everything. So many locations and so much blood. I don't know about beauty, sir. It seems to me that your architect created a playground for a killer." "That was hardly his intention," Penrose said evenly. "And Mr. Hitchcock's little games didn't help. They made things much more difficult for the police." "You weren't the investigating officer, were you?" "No, it was never my case. I had to stand by and watch someone else take charge. For a moment I was a suspect, just like everybody else." "That must have been quite a new experience." Penrose nodded. Throughout his career he had always prided himself on a sensitivity towards those affected by murder, an awareness that, in the process of getting to the truth, many innocent lives were torn apart. But nothing could have prepared him for the ease with which people turned on each other when their own character was under question. Fortunately, it didn't last long. Events came to a natural conclusion and the case seemed to be wrapped up very efficiently.